Welcome to Tony at 12. I'm Tony LeBlanc, and today I'm in conversation with Stephen Robin, who has recently published a book entitled Bible 365. Before getting into the book, I want to take a look at Stephen's very varied career. Good to see you.
Good morning. Good to see you too, Tony.
From Ferguson, Missouri.
Yes, indeed. Right
Oh,
across the Atlantic, across the pond.
it seems to work okay. First of all, you presumably did a degree in architecture, did you?
I did. I went to London University, to the University College London, and at the Bartlett School of Architecture, and I studied there for the 3 years undergraduate degree, and then I did my 1 year out, where you do a year out with two different practices, one a small practice and one a very large practice. And then you're supposed to go back and do your final diploma before you qualify as an architect. I had decided as I was going back into that position that I was thinking I was going to move towards the BBC rather than stay in architecture. I
But
had a,
you took the award, Stephen.
I did, yes. That was with two of my friends.
Hmm.
That was with Peter Harding and Andrew Stone. And the three of us were working on a project which ultimately got the Royal Academy Award from the trustees of the British Institution. We created a system for expanding a traditional clasp style school to make it more user friendly for children who had handicaps.
Hmm.
And we designed a program using the CLASP system just at the point in time where it was switching from imperial standards to metric standards. And so we were able to slightly modify our request for amount of CLASP material, which is all the building material. And we were able to get more or less double the size of anybody else who tried to do the same as we did. So it was a very successful project and was built uh, under supervision of a local council.
It's great when you can do something that really is useful because some of the architectural monstrosities one sees around. It's a bit like modern painting and stuff like that.
Well, the University College London, the School of Architecture is really brilliant in that way. It teaches people very much to think about the end users
Yeah,
rather than glorifying the architect.
yeah.
So I enjoyed doing it. We we had a lot of fun with it. We built a model of what we were doing, but when I say we built a model, we actually built one that was 10 foot by 10 foot. And the professors who were doing the judging, actually crawled underneath it and popped up inside of it and said, "Okay, now turn the lights on and off in it." And we were turning the lights on and off with batteries, and our model railway initiatives came into good full force there.
But what was the attraction of the BBC?
Well, at University College, I had an amazing professor who was called a moral tutor, who was Peter Rayner Banham, and he'd done a couple of programs for the BBC about architecture, and I was always very impressed with those. But also, he was the one who said to me, "You know what? I think you might have more fun and enjoy your life more if you went on into broadcasting, because I think you care about people a lot, and I think you could do more good there."
And
And
that was into the World Service.
yes, I started off as what I would call a greasy spoon or a greasy
Hmm.
rat, twiddling knobs on the BBC World Service. You start off as a trainee, what's called a studio manager, and you're the sound balancer, sound engineering person for the programs. And at that time, we broadcast in 39 languages in the BBC World Service, 1974. Very interesting time, lots going on, as is always the case.
Hmm.
But it was incredible because the starting there as well was really rather interesting for me because I was amongst lots and lots of different people from different countries, different nations, and that appealed to me greatly.
So the BBC World Service and the BBC in those days was completely different to the discredited wreck that we currently see before us. What, have you any views
I, w-
why
I
they
would,
changed?
well, I would say I don't completely agree with what you just said, but I think the nuts and bolts of the people there, the grassroots, if you like, of the people there, are absolutely fantastic.
Hmm.
They really are brilliant people. They hard workers. If you've had to work 24-hour shifts in broadcasting, which certainly we did, and we still do, and even more so now because news is so quick to react. I think your basic people who are doing the what I would call the grunt work
Yeah.
are really trustworthy and loyal and get the job done. There's always going to be the opportunity for a few bad apples to float around and want to distort things sometimes to their favor or to favor of their friends. And that happens. It's happened since it started, and it probably will happen after it's ended.
Hmm.
But it's the nuts and bolts of it, the nuts and bolts of the BBC, is an absolutely phenomenal, precious gem. I mean, to be honest, I listen to the BBC every night here in America, and I watch the BBC television news in America because it's so uncorrupted. It's so
Bit
obviously.
wokish though, isn't it?
Well, there's been a period of time where it's swung one way and then swung the other and then
Hmm.
swung back, and it really, in that case, depends on who's running newsrooms and the personal areas. My godparents had two godsons, me and another guy, and the other guy worked at the BBC as well, and he and I both felt that it was a very loyal and trustworthy place to be.
I used to be very proud of it, but I'm
I still
currently
am.
reading Diana Rama
Oh yes, yes, I've
about
seen.
Mr. Bashir
Yeah.
and the cover up.
Well, and I
And
think that's as I say, you get the odd apple here and there who are sort of self-aggrandizement, and that is unfortunate. And there are loopholes which people will exploit.
yeah.
The 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 thing that happens is that people then react to it. I was reading an article in a magazine called The Oldie,
Yes.
which had John Simpson talking about three director generals who had ended their time whilst he was around.
Hmm.
John Simpson's a good guy, and he talks about things fairly. He's a straight shooter.
But he's the old school.
He is, but I
Yeah.
think there's a balance there, and I
Yeah.
think we have to recognize that we need to be more open and affirming in things, but at the same time maintain the standards that were always there.
Okay. I won't argue with you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
No, no,
I
no. We've
always
got a
like
lot to talk
I always
about.
like a healthy discussion is always good.
We've got a lot to talk about because the next part of your career involves Sir David Frost and the Guinness Book of Records. How did
Yep.
that come about?
Well, I was doing some work within the BBC in different areas, and one of the neat things about the BBC is you can do what's called an attachment program.
Hmm.
That's where you apply for, and if you're lucky, you get selected to do a 3 month or a 6 month attachment to another department or another program or another area. And I did several of those in different parts. I worked on Newsbeat on Radio 1. I worked on a program called Action Special, which went across Radio 1 and Radio 4 and Radio 3 and Radio 2. We actually dreamed it up and then it was taken on board by the government at the time, which Norman Tebbit, I think, was the employment minister.
Hmm.
That created the Youth Opportunity Program. So with doing our program Action Special, we actually created something that the government thought they'd like to take on board and turn it into a proper program. Doing those led me to meeting David Frost in a couple of different environments, different opportunities. And he asked if I would go on board as his research producer for a new show that we were trying to get together and bring to the BBC, which was the Guinness Book of World Records Hall of Fame show. And this involved getting people, trying to find the people who would be the best of the best.
Hmm.
And of course, the best of the best, as far as I was concerned, was people like Paul McCartney and Billie Jean King and a host of other people. Ranulph Fiennes was another one. And we were able to get them and get them to come and do this show, which was a completely different type of show than the BBC had done before. And to be blunt, it was made possible by the fact that a lot of the overhead costs of doing the show could be actually taken off our hands by the wonderful company Guinness, who helped pay for their travel and their hotels and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we paid for the BBC paid for the program for the actual recording and the manufacture of that program, but the ancillary costs that make things happen and or don't make things happen was handled by Guinness.
Were the McWhirters involved at that point?
Uh, Norris definitely was. I was very much involved with Norris. He and I got on like a house on fire.
Yeah.
Ross, unfortunately, had been killed just before that. And that was a tragic assassination by the IRA. There's another strange link with that is that later, much later, I'm jumping ahead maybe a little bit too far and I can come back to it, but there's an incident with when I was working advising John Major that ties in with that.
Yeah. It was tragic, wasn't it?
It was,
Why
it
was
was.
he, why was he, why did they go for him?
Well, he actually he decided that there was a I think there was a bombing in London
Yeah.
time, if I remember correctly, and he put out a reward. He put out a reward saying, and anybody who wants to give any information
Mm.
about the bombing in
Mm.
London, you don't see many people doing that, stepping up
Yeah.
and saying, hey, we'll give a £50,000 reward for information who will give us leaders to catching these criminals. And the IRA did not appreciate it and turned around and assassinated him for it.
Dreadful. Dreadful. Now, career's taking another turn. We've done a bit of show business, if you don't mind me using the
Yeah.
phrase. But now we're into being a media consultant to the Conservatives under Margaret Thatcher in the 1987 general election. That must have been interesting.
Well, it was. It tied back directly to when I worked for the BBC on Action Special.
Hmm.
As I mentioned, Norman Tebbit was involved in taking what we did with Action Special and turning it into a youth opportunity program. And we'd stayed in touch over the years with different things and just different conversations. And one of the things I also did for the BBC was I covered all of the party conferences, all three of the major parties for several years, covering them for actuality of their broadcasting. And I put together an fun list of which members of parliament could speak a foreign language.
Right.
And so I was then inviting them in to be interviewed by the people from the different language services. So I got to know Norman Tebbit and a few of the other politicians at the time. And he asked me whether or not I'd consider going on board to run their communications for all the broadcast media, radio and television. And I worked alongside of Harvey Thomas, who
Hmm.
died a few years ago. He worked on all of the major events for the Prime Minister, the big bus events, as I called them. And I covered all of the radio and television coverage, which for a 3-week campaign, I think we did something like 1,800 television interviews
Wow.
in a 3-week period. And we had
Yeah.
to we had our war room at Conservative headquarters with our big boards of information and was quite an operation. I had about 20 part-timers coming in and working alongside of me.
An astounding woman. How did you get on with her?
I got on with her fine
Yeah.
because I was one of these people, I'm afraid, who it led me to giving me a company name a few years later, which was that I always believe that when you're working with somebody who's busy, and as she was,
Yeah.
and as a lot of my other bosses have been over the years, that you basically let them know about any problems there are with the business that you're working in, but you always offer them solutions first.
Yeah.
So it's solutions, not problems.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she liked that, and she also appreciated it. And there was a couple of other members of parliament and a couple of lords who latched onto it and said, "Oh yes, Prime Minister, we're bringing you solutions, not problems." Well, they weren't, but I was.
I,
And
I remember that classic joke about her when she's at this restaurant with the cabinet
Oh yes, the
And
cabbages.
what about the vegetables? Yes, they'll have what I'm having.
She actually had a great sense of humor as
Yeah,
well,
I
though.
got that
Um,
impression.
but also religiously, which is another thing we had in common, was that her father not only was a shopkeeper, but he was also a lay Methodist minister, and she'd been
Hmm.
brought up as a Methodist.
Hmm.
And she really, what didn't come across, which upset me a bit, was she really did care about people. And her bottom line was always, we've got to make sure that people are taken care of.
Mm.
And, she might not have liked all of the aspects of the social security system, but she also recognized that people needed a safety net
Yeah,
and
yeah,
needed care, and there were people who needed help.
yeah.
In fact, she and Her Majesty the Queen got on very well on that issue as well. So they thought alike on it, which most people didn't realize. They
No,
didn't see it.
a lot of people used to think there was a bit of friction between them.
There might have been early on because
Yeah,
of the situation. And
two
remember that
women.
Her Majesty the Queen had been in relationship with Winston Churchill when he was
Mm,
Prime Minister.
mm,
And Winston Churchill was totally different from Margaret Thatcher,
mm,
totally different.
mm.
Uh, but she really did care about people, and that always saddened me that it didn't come across as much as it should have done, I think. She felt, or some of her advisors felt it was a sign of weakness if she showed that she cared, and I think
Yeah,
that was the pain.
yeah, yeah, very much so. And then you got involved with John Major,
Well,
crisis communications. That must have been interesting.
well, it was John. I met John whilst they were campaigning for the 87 election. I met him quite a few times, and I went to work for a company called Shandwick, which was run by Peter Gummer, now Lord Gummer, I guess.
Hmm.
And we were doing various programs for them, including working with British Airports Authority and the Northern Ireland Development Board. And then we were asked when the first signs of activity were happening with the invasion of Kuwait in, I think it was August, was the time that happened. We were asked to do sort of check up on what the media coverage was around the world because with Shandwick, we had offices in every country throughout the world for public relations work. And so we did this program where overnight, every night, one or other of us, there were two of us working on this, would receive input from all of the media throughout the world,
Yeah,
and media coverage, and we'd sift it through and see what we wanted to feel that we needed to share with the Prime Minister and with the what the media dubbed the War Cabinet, which was a bit of a misnomer, but there you go. Uh, but every morning at about 6 o'clock in the morning, I'd walk across Horse Guards Parade and either give that to Peter Gummer or his associate Richard Sermon, and they take it on into the Foreign Office, and I'd be get feedback later in the day from either the Foreign Secretary or from Downing Street about what they wanted to do next. In fact, though, I think it was somewhere in that period was when I just walked back into my office on Whitehall, past Horse Guards. I was in the back office making coffee when the IRA fired their mortar attack on Downing Street,
wow.
and the truck that they used to fire the mortars from had parked right outside my office on Whitehall, which blew out the entire office. And if I hadn't been in the back room making coffee, you would not have me sitting here today because even with our bomb-proof nylon curtain things that caught all the glass from all the windows, the whole office got completely destroyed. And I was just very lucky. It was a close call, and I was very lucky to not get hurt.
You
Um,
you then moved to the US. That was in connection with another job that was basically corporate public relations.
yeah.
Were you
Well,
headhunted on that?
well, it was a combination of things. Depends what you mean by headhunted. It's funny, funny you should say that. Um, I got married in 1991
Hmm.
to a woman who had been working for a bank in London, a consortia bank, Scandinavian bank, and she was from St. Louis, Missouri. And we got married in 91. We actually got married down at Cliveden, which was a wonderful place to
Oh
get married.
yeah, absolutely.
We were actually got married in St. Nicholas Church, and then our reception was at Cliveden, and we had the whole of Cliveden for the weekend to ourselves and our friends and family, and that was a wonderful event. But a year later, when my wife and I welcomed our first son, Charles, she suddenly decided she really felt she wanted to move back to America. So it was a question of, do I move now? Do we go now, or do we go later, or what do we do? And I thought, well, I was entering my early 40s then, and I thought, right, this is the time to go.
Yeah.
And when I first got here in America, um, my now ex-wife, by the way, she got a new job in 3 days, and I took 6 months.
Right. Okay. Obviously, a
Because
bit of British bias game there.
well, it was interesting. It was just actually it was the fact that there was a major sort of dump of employees in public relations and other areas at that time. It was just a downturn in the economy.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but
But
the corporate job was interesting and really, really good. And I was able to help them grow a particular part of the business, which was made up of about 20 divisions. And we grew that from 600 million in sales to 1.4 billion in sales in about three
wow.
years.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
more importantly, we introduced a new technology, which is what I was focused on, which was called switched reluctance motor technology. And that now is in almost every car and every vehicle you can possibly think of, every washing machine, dishwasher, dryer, it's all in there. And this company in America had a complete lock on it. And so at one point they had, I think it's approaching 97% market share in the white goods market in America,
Wow.
which is unbelievable. But a
Mm.
great company to work for, really good company.
So you had some good fun there. Um,
Oh,
coming across to the religious bit,
uh-huh.
did you get the calling in America, or had you already received it?
Well, I think what happened was that over the years, I mean, in fact, this I did cover within the book, is that I felt that I've been very blessed in that my parents were very involved with the church and
Yeah.
very active in the church. But also, my father would be very conscientious about things like reading the Bible, in that he would do that most evenings, not every evening, but most evenings.
Hmm.
And I'd sit and listen to him.
Yeah.
And so I was in the habit of hearing things being read. And then he also did another great gift to me, which was that he would always say, well, what do you think? And I'd say what I thought. And as a little child, that's an amazing gift to have.
Mm.
And then he would not say, well, you got it wrong or you got it right. He'd say, well, what do you think?
Yeah.
What do you think? And so he'd always let me ask questions. And that was great. And that was partly because of his upbringing, which I do cover in the book as well, which was a very, he last saw his father when he was like 10 years old. And, he had a tough childhood.
Mm.
Um, He was born in America. He was born in Durango, Colorado. They moved to Mexico when he was 6 to do silver mining, which my grandfather did. My grandmother then passed away. She had a an aneurysm and was buried in Mexico in Santa Cruz in the American Cemetery. And my father got shipped off to a boarding school in Australia,
Wow. Oh,
to Scotch College, Melbourne,
yeah.
where his cousins were. And then he came back to go to university in London at Imperial College, and he became a chemical engineer. Worked for Dunlop
Hmm.
in the UK. But he was always very aware that he hadn't had that relationship with his father, and so he was always very. He didn't know that he wasn't supposed to just let me ask questions. I think that was the trick of it. But
Well,
I think
it
when I got
obviously worked.
when I got to America, I'd always been active in the church. I'd always
Yeah.
been an active lay person, lay member of the church right the way through. And it was interesting in that when I got here, um, several priests sort of said to me, "Hey, you ought to be doing. We're going to start this new program, this new Bible study. You ought to be involved with it." And that sort of led me to thinking about more about what I was doing with my faith
Hmm.
and what I wanted to do more with my life and what that really meant, looking at the gifts I'd been given, which I'd so far applied to all the things we've discussed. But what is it that God really wanted me to do? And
Yeah.
so I started questioning it more, and I would do visits to there's a couple of Episcopal monasteries over here, and Episcopal is the same as Church of England outside of England.
Right.
Uh, so several monasteries, and I visited with them, and I stayed with them, and I uh, discussed it with various religious friends and then decided I would go. There was a break in my career time. So I thought, right, this is the opportunity. I'm going to go to back to seminary and do a 3 year seminarian course and work with hospitals and see what happens. And it led me into what's called chaplaincy, as opposed to the priesthood, where I worked with in different big hospitals here in St. Louis over a period of about 20 years. And in that time, I probably saw over 100,000 patients and was present at over 2,000 deaths
Mm.
and about 600 births, which all of which is an amazing experience.
Yeah. Uh,
And that
uh,
really led me to the book.
yeah. I mean, I guess that, doing something like that's far more fulfilling than just being the village vicar and
It's different. It's
sitting
very
down
different.
waiting for people to arrive, sort of thing.
I
Yeah.
think one of the problems the church is facing today is that a lot of the clergy have been encouraged to think more about how do you maintain your church? How do you
Yeah.
pay for it? And how do you cover the costs? And how do it's more like running a small business
Mm.
than thinking about the theology and thinking about the ministry of what you're there for. A lot of people in both churches in England and in America really come to church for births, deaths, weddings, and funerals,
Yeah. Yeah.
and Christmas and Easter. And they expect you to be there, which is a problem if you can't afford to keep the church open. Um, but it's an interesting dichotomy.
Do you have problems with anti-Semitism?
Uh,
In the States?
yes, there is a degree, and certainly there's been an uptick in it in the last couple of years, and I think that's partly the political climate. There are people who have felt very much that uh, the way the war in Gaza was handled has affected people's views of Israel. I think probably incorrectly so. But I think that they feel that um, the actions that Israel took with Gaza could have been done in a different way. But I think you're seeing violent responses to violent actions. So,
Mm.
Hamas should not have done what they did. And
Quite.
if they hadn't done what they did, then Israel would not have done what it did.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
unfortunately, one has led to the other.
Do you get many demonstrations in the States? They seem to have one every weekend in London.
They do, and not in the same way. There's quite often much bigger
Yeah.
demonstrations.
Yeah.
But also, there's also the group of people who will demonstrate at things quite regularly. And
Rent a mob.
well, no, because they're all different.
Oh, right. Okay.
So, so you can't label them that way because everybody is demonstrating against things that they care passionately about.
Mm.
And it is a very different country. I think the difference between Britain and America is much bigger than most people realize.
Yeah. 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 The whole setup is different.
Yeah.
Now, let's get on to the subject of the book because we're coming into the last 8 minutes or so.
Okay.
Um, what made you decide to write it?
I decided that I really could not write it. The double negative. Um, Over the years, and this goes back literally over 50 years, I've kept journals, and because it's my way of dealing with issues going on in my life,
Hmm.
whether it was my first divorce or my second divorce, it's helped me understand what was going on and helps me understand and recover and grow from the
Mm.
experiences.
Mm.
And so very early on, also, I realized I was linking the fact that I was reading the Bible every day and it's a habit I got into with my father,
Yeah.
was that I read the Bible. I don't read it the way a lot of others do. I read it straight through. So I go from Genesis to Revelation in a year. And there's some dry patches there, which can be pretty dry. And there's some quite passionate patches, which are really quite good and quite powerful. But I would make notes over the years on things that were going on in my life that related to whatever it was I was reading. I was always looking for the connection
Mm.
between what was written in the Bible and what was going on in my life, because I felt that the meaning of the Bible was one that it was there to help us to
Yeah.
get through life rather than to judge us or set rules and things for us. It was there to ask us questions. So the more questions I ask the Bible, the more questions the Bible asks me back. And I think that's a fascinating aspect. But the journals were things that I've kept over the years, which my children would like me to destroy now I've written the book. So they don't have to read any of the things in the journals that they don't want to read. But we'll see about that.
Well,
But
that's the problem about getting old.
but it
Do you declutter for your children before you die?
something like that. Yes, yes, yes. The book itself, though, has been fascinating to write because it's enabled me to think back over some things and look at things in a different way now.
Yeah.
And it's been able to realize also that this book that's been there for tens of thousands of years in the case of the Jewish Bible, the Old
Mm.
Testament, that's been there as a guide for us from 10,000 years ago, and really reminding myself again and again that Jesus only had the Old Testament. The Old Testament was all he had, and
Yeah.
he was trying to help us understand how to interpret it again in a different way,
Yeah.
and that way became the New Testament.
Yeah. And of course, that only got written up after his death.
Well, quite. I mean,
Mm.
a lot of the Gospels weren't written till, between 70 and 100 years later.
Mm.
And you're
Yeah.
talking about, I mean, if you stop and think about asking somebody what happened to your grandfather in World War II, to think of the time frame difference between when something happened and something was written up. I mean, I know that when I talked with my grandfather on my mother's side about his fighting in Gallipoli in World War One, by the time he talked to me about it, it was 70 years on from when it had happened. And I'm sure that some of the things he told me were so far-fetched that his memory of 70 years before was not
Yeah.
exactly accurate.
Yeah. I guess
So,
when you're in that sort of situation, you only remember the good bits.
well, and also there weren't that many people who were first-hand, eyes on the ground.
Mm.
There wasn't a CNN at that point or a BBC.
No,
So
not at all.
so you didn't have people covering the story. You were relying
Yeah.
on friends and relatives
Yeah.
whose biases naturally came in. And they wanted to make sure, I think the early church was trying desperately to make sure that the story of Jesus matched with what was there in the Old Testament.
Mm.
They needed that justification because they were taking over a lot of Jewish synagogues. I mean, Matthew's gospel was written to defend um, Christianity in Jewish synagogues.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, he was providing the answers of why the Jews in the synagogue should believe in Jesus as the Messiah.
Yeah. It's a very interesting subject. So, based on the 365
Right.
days in a year,
Uh-huh.
do you sort of how do you actually work on it? Do you sort of say so many pages you're going to read a
Uh,
day?
well, I tell you, with the book has been out now for a couple of months, and I
Yeah.
found the people who bought it so far have all read it differently.
Mm.
One person read it on Kindle and read it the day it came out and contacted me the next day and said, I thought the day 273 was interesting, blah, blah, blah. And you think, oh, right, that's one way of doing it. And then another person said, well, I'm going to wait until January the 1st, and then I'm going to read it through a
Mm.
page a day. And I said, well, that's great because that will get you in the habit of reading the Bible daily, which is part of what I want.
Yeah.
And the other, it's been everything in between the two.
Mm.
So I'm happy that anybody wants to read it in any way they like, um, but also to draw on the guidance of where you can read the scriptures from. And there's a little chart in there that shows you how the different days readings pan out. But what's neat is you can pick up your Bible, read a few pages, put it down, and then the next day you pick it up from the same spot.
Mm.
You're not going backwards and forwards and jumping
No.
around. And, like on a church on a Sunday morning, you read a reading from the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Gospel.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you've got to jump around in the book to do that. Well, I don't think that works for a lot of people. And
No.
by reading it straight through, you're actually making it a lot easier for people.
Yeah. The book's available in the United Kingdom.
Yes, it is. It's available in any bookstore now that you care to use. If you don't like Amazon, you can get it at
Yeah.
another place.
Yeah.
Amazon's
Other
the
outlets are available.
absolutely everywhere from a Barnes and Noble, or you can. There's a website I also use called books.by.
Books.by. Okay.
Books.by. It's actually an Australian company
Right.
who do everything Amazon does, but don't charge the royalty that Amazon does.
Right.
The,
Okay.
the author gets more money that way, and so that's quite
All
good.
for that.
Yeah.
I'm afraid to have to say that we've run out of time.
Well,
I've
there you
really
go.
enjoyed this chat.
Thank you. And it's interesting for me because my family, the Robin, it's pronounced Robin, by the way,
Oh,
goes
beg
all.
your pardon.
That's okay. My father was born in Durango, Colorado, but his father was born in Jersey, and the family lived in Jersey and Guernsey for over 1,000 years.
Wow.
And the Robin family goes back right the way through to when William the Conqueror's father invaded the Channel Islands, because the two Robins had been with him at that time. Their name was Robini because they were from northern Italy.
All right. Okay.
But they were in there before William the Conqueror invaded, and I know you've had some bio tapestry readings and things like
Yeah.
that, and some of
Yeah.
our relatives were definitely involved in working on the tapestries, and they were also involved in providing the bags of money that were given to William the Conqueror in order to fund his adventure in England. So, so it's
Very interesting.
I actually have quite a lot of documents about that, in which I was sort of the family historian,
Yeah.
and I also have a clock
Right.
which was made by Grebelin in Paris in 1666,
And
and he.
talking about the clock, we've run out of
Oh,
time.
we run out. There you go.
Well, sorry. Been a
No,
great
that's okay.
pleasure. Really enjoyed it. Take
I enjoyed
care.
it too.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Tony, and thank you for the opportunity.
Pleasure. Out on
Thank you.
Friday. Bye.
Okay. Bye bye.